Well, howdy, how you doing? My name's Paul, this is Plan Z. Welcome to the session. Hope this finds you very well. Right, so this is part one of the AMP deep dive. Part one is going to have different parts added to it, so it will be part 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. This will be 1.1, where we discuss the routing for patch 1 of the templates. There's basically 3 patches I'm going to show you the routings for, but the third one I'm not going to show you just yet. I'm only using it to shoot out what the amps sound like, the difference between using something like 2 notes, which I run a stereo 2 notes in my rig, or using the same amp through GT1000 cab sims. I've got a patch set up to allow us to do some to look at each of the amps, see what those differences are when we use different cabinets on them. But yeah, this first episode is going to be a little bit longer because I discussed with you at the beginning. I show you all the ins and outs. So we start with the input, we go to the output, we deal with the speakers, and then we move on about 5 minutes into it, into the layout of the routing. Now this video is all about the routing. It's not about the amp. Could be any amp that's in there. What I've then done is I've copied this patch 20 times for each of the amps, and then changed the amp, and then I'm doing a deep dive into each of the amps. So what I wanted to do was to make those videos shorter. I've been having trouble getting the length of my videos down. To keep those videos shorter, I'm just posting these routings one, so it'll be 1.1, 1.2 will be the first 2 that we're going to be looking at. The first 2 patches, I've discussed it with you in the previous videos if you've been following. So this is the settings for the routing of the first patch. Let's dive in. Right guys, so in this view I just want to orientate what's happening with the control switches. We're going to look at the assigns and the signal chain, but I just want you to understand what it looks like from here. So my volume knob, which I reference in there, is this one here. That's at 12 o'clock, and this first up and down is assigned to my FS7, so those 2 have moved to there. This now becomes the change. Can you hear them? They're coming for me. Quick, I might need to end this video. Right, so this here, when this is blue, it's the low gain, and when it's red, it can be either medium gain, which it is at the moment, or high gain. Now I can cut to low gain from there, leave this on high gain, and let's say engage. When I engage this, it can be on. It can be set to either of those when I engage it, basically, okay? So you can go to either a high gain or a medium gain. Now, the sheriff is assigned here. So when it's blue, it's on. And the reason that's blue is because throughout all my patches, the tuner is blue, and it's usually on the number I assign it to. But to free up for the sheriff in this, I moved my tuner into the second patch, which we cover in a separate video. I'll link that video below. And yeah, so it's there red to remind me that that's a high gain, and that's my sheriff. So yeah, there we've got the low, the medium, the high. Let's engage all of the top row now. We've got a compressor now. You'll feel the gentle lift there if you're in headphones. This green button here is telling me I've got a double tracking, and here this engages the wets. There's my reverb. Now I've got a couple of assigns on this one here, which we'll see in there in a minute. So I've got a slicer and a phaser, and when I engage the delay and push up the expression, that delay will feed back even though I turn it off. In fact, I can turn all the wets off. Now go dry. Could even, let's get fancy and put this is a reverb from HXFX. Okay, so that's what's happening with those assigns. Let's turn the compressor off. Let's go to the low gain. Now in all the templates, they're all set up the same way at the moment. The only thing that's changed is the amplifier. We've got a clon. Now I'm going to do a separate video where I run through all the distortions using the transparent amp so we can hear them clearly, and that, can you hear? This delay will continue to be there feeding back that reverb. Let's turn that back. Okay, so let's dive into the settings. Okay guys, so this is our first patch, but what we're going to do first of all is go to the menu button, and we're going to go along to input first of all. So we hit ins and outs, which is the third one. We go to input, and you can see my level here is at +4. When I strum really strongly, I'm coming up to that line. Here's my back pickup is slightly hotter. Okay, intentionally I have that hotter. Now we're going to go to the main out setting. Now my main out setting for this patch and the second patch are the same. The output select is to line phones because these outputs are going off into the 2 notes. There's nothing happening on the global EQ, but let's have a look. You can see everything's at 0 there, apart from a low cut at 40 Hz. Now I run a bass through here, so I don't want to mess with what's happening above there, and I do my high cut at 8. Okay, and then the output level I've got at +4 dBu. Now if we come out of here, we go into the sub outs, you'll see my output select is to recording because I want to have the option to have the microphones on those channels. Now I use those for my wets. Now the next one is the global EQ, where again here you'll see everything's at 0, but let's make that 40. We've got my cuts the same. Okay, the output level. Now what I did was, well, while 2 notes was disconnected, in fact earlier in the year, last year, I leveled the main outs to the sub outs, and I found that when the master knob that you have on the front of the GT1000, when that's at 12 o'clock, to match that, I found 30 at +4 dBu was how I matched that. So let's come out of here. That's how that's set. Let's go into the patch, and before we go into the layout of the patch, let's just look at these speakers again, and let's look at what happens in them. So we'll start off with my sub outs. Now actually, in where I'm using it as a wet patch, I actually run the microphone as flat. I find it's wetter. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put on a reverb. I'm now going to put the mics on what I would normally have. Let's make that flat again. Just found when I engage. Let's put the mic on again. Anyway, either way, I'm going to leave them as flat because I'm just using it for reverbs, really. Reverbs and delays. And I want the signals to be the same and match, and to me that just feels like it's more three-dimensional when I've got everything going. But we're going to turn those off for a second. So within this here, the microphone level I've got at 100 because I want those reverbs to be consistent both sides. And I've got the direct mix off, and it's the same for both of those speakers. Now let's come back to the main outs. Now this divide here engages the wets when I do that, but my main guitar signal is coming through these and into the 2 notes. Now here, because I've got line out selected, it gives you the option to put a microphone on it, although you don't get your cabs. However, you want to turn down the mic level and turn up the direct mix, because your mics are happening on your IR or on your 2 notes or whatever it is you're using to get your IRs in there. Okay, and I do that on both sides, and I have the speaker split because I am running split. So let's go to the front of the signal chain now.
Usually the first thing I hit is either a treble boost or an EQ, and in this EQ I importantly do my low cut. Now my low cut's quite high, 125, but then I'm using quite fat beats and bass, and I don't want to interfere with them, and the guitar doesn't need to be down there for what I'm doing. Now I take a little bit of a pinch out of 315. I take a little bit of a pinch, -1 there, of 160 to take some woof out when I go to high gains. We come down, we've got the looper, we've got the volume and wahs if we want to use them, and then the first thing I hit is my Send Return 2, which has got the HX effects in it. Now that allows me to put on, that's their clon. Dialed in differently at the moment, I haven't dialed in the HX effects one, but that's my one. So in here I've got a compressor on. It's a very light compressor, it's just leveling things, but the important thing is when I changed to this new routing, I'm running line level into the HX effects, and I found that for it not to colour or boost the sound either way, I found by dropping the send from the GT1000, which is quite hot, down to 85 and return level to 90, when all the effects, when everything was disengaged in the HX effects, at this settings my tone remained the same. When it went at 100 it was just too hot and it was altering the tone, and it's quite, you need to fine tune that. It's funny, I was going down by one increment at a time, and what I found was yeah, it really makes a difference. I ended up on 90 on very square numbers, but it took a while to get there. I say a while, a few minutes. Anyway, so then the next in the chain, I've got a feedbacker there that can be any effects I want. I've got a couple of drives, and then we hit our first divide. Now this divide here is taking control over when the sheriff is in the mix. So this is the sheriff now. Okay, so let's change that. So it's just an A-B selection here. I've got that in the assigns. We'll look at my assigns in this video as well. And the mixer is at stereo in this one. Now what happens is the signal comes through, and when it goes into the sheriff, it just hits the sheriff. I've got a noise gate there, and then the EQ for that is here. And I'm using this EQ twice. It's handling my high cut, which is at 8K, so I do it again in here, just to be, I don't know why I do it in there. I've already got it in the master, but just should I choose to change that at any point, it's there. And I'm taking a cut at 500 Hertz here by 5 dB on a Q of 2, just to take some of that middle mud out. Now I'm going to be playing around with that on the different amps, so I cut anywhere between 315 and 500, 600, depending on the amp or the tone I'm going for, but the tool is there. This EQ is here for me to play with if I want to, and the level here has just got a slight bump there because of what I've taken out to balance it. Okay, now the EQ before that is dealing with everything on the GT1000 amps. Now here it's got a little bump in the high, a little bump, actually let's take that, yeah, I've given a little bump there, I'll tell you why, because here I've taken a cut of 2 dB on a wide Q at 4 kilohertz. Now that's sometimes 3, sometimes 2, depending on the amp. Okay, this EQ here is left for me to play around with. I'm not using it at the moment. It's safe for the deep dive sessions. And here I've given it a little boost of the highs, and a little bump of 1 to compensate for what I took out. Okay, so that's the chain. We've got a noise suppressor here. Now I do have it on because, listen, if I engage a drive and then go to the high gain amp, I've got a bit of noise. If I go to my sheriff, I get a lot of noise, so I want a noise gate on there. Let's pull that up. Okay, why I have the noise gates on is because when I'm live looping, I don't want any hiss, any noise in there at all. I want it nice and tight. So what I'm going to do now is take off. So I had the compressor on there and shouldn't have had it. So this is the sheriff. This is now the transparent amp. So what's going on is in the apparently I'm just using that as this template to look at. Forget about the amp settings for the moment. What's important is that this amp is assigned to turn on and off. I'm going to show you the assigns in a minute. And what happens is I press my first, which is my bank down, and it turns that amp off and turns this amp on. Now this amp has got two sets of assigns associated with it. I'm going to come along to the end. The first amp that we just turned off is the low gain. The medium gain is what we engage by turning that and turning this off. But when I turn it on and off, I can have it in either. You'll notice this is now high gain. When I engage it, I can have it ready for me in either high or low, or medium gain. And there I just dial them in slightly differently. Now let's go to the assigns. You've got two places to make assigns. You hit Control Assign, and then just going to quickly go into Control Function. So in Control Function, I generally turn off the bank up and down and save them for when I need to make a change. You can see here I've got the AMP2 allocated to that. Go along the top row, they're all clear for me. If I want to make any simple assigns or changes to this template, this is the place for me to make those simple assigns. You know, turn on a drive, turn on an effect, whatever it might be. Along the bottom here, this first assign, which is the channel select for the divider that's engaging the sheriff, that's here, okay? Then this is our patch, obviously, if you know how these are laid out. I've got the DS2 or DS1, one of the two will be assigned here. And again, it's an easy thing for me to change the master delay and one of the modulation effects. What we're going to do is we're now going to just scroll. Actually, before we go to the other assign page, look at the second page. So I've got my bank up and down assigned to my FS7, which are control 4 and 5. The expression is happening over on the expression switch. I'm using that at the moment for the delay reverb, the delay feedback. Yeah, okay, so that's what this page looks like. We're going to come out of there now and go into assign settings. And what I'm going to do, you can see I've left one spare one there for me in this patch. I'm going to start at the top. It's a bit of a muddle. What we're going to do here is I would focus on this side so you can see what's happening. So when I hit bank up, it's changing the amp from middle to high. It changes the level. This assign is off. It changes the tops. So obviously in each of these templates now I can just modify these slightly per amp. So there's my middle for this amp, playing it quite safe with all of the settings here, taking quite a bit of bass out there, look. Now, so they're the assigns for the amp. Now here we've got another spare one that I've left myself, which is quite handy. Going to want that at some point in a tune. My number 5 is effects number 3. Now the mixers. What's going on here is we're just going to go back to the screen for a second. So we come through, we've hit the amps, we've hit the EQs, we've covered all of that, and then we hit this mixer, and this mixer is just facilitating one function. In this patch it's double tracking, and in the other patch it's stereo left right. I've got the amp set up differently. So when I engage the button, you'll see it just splits my signal. So here we go dual, everything else is off. Just scroll through the pages there so you can see it. But here at the mixer end, every time I hit, when I hit the button, it just toggles between stereo and left right. I keep the levels the same, and I've got the spread at 50, so it's quite tight. And I find anything beyond 50 is not, it starts going a bit loose, trying to create a stereo effect. Now, so that's happening in here. So we've got div 1 goes between single and dual, and it goes between it's mixer 2 and divider 2. Goes from pan left right and stereo when I hit control 2. We know the last one. Oh, I just turned that by mistake. So the reverb on and off. What have I got the reverb on and off in this patch? Do I need that to happen? So there's a spare assign for me. That block can stay on. I think I must have left that when I was testing out the patch. So that's what happens there. What we're going to do is we're just going to strum through now what that sounds like with those changes. So this is the low gain of the transparent. I then switch to a medium gain, slightly fuller. Then within this one I switch again. That's the high gain. I then hit for the sheriff. I can swap to the sheriff, and if I want, before I go back to the GT1000 amp, I could already switch to the clean. We've got a compressor here. Now we're going to do separate sessions on the compressors. I just want to show you where it is, and in this patch I'm using the stereo compressor. And there are the settings for it. Okay. I'll dive deeper into that when that happens. So now let's split the channel. So I'm just running across the top row and showing you what it does. So now we've gone double tracking. Now we're up the middle, and now I've engaged the wets. Now we've got a slicer and a phaser on that. And then if I engage the delay, come along to here, let's have a look at the feedback. So you'll notice here, the feedback has just gone up. I've just used the expression pedal to do that, and that will now, if I turn off the delay, that will still continue to feedback. Okay, so that's how the routing for this patch works, and how things are going to be for the next bunch of videos. I'll see you in the next routing video. Catch you later. Bye.